Let's look at how to actually code this example that puts these orange glyphs in the margin of lines that have to do on them. This particular example relies on the behavior of the glyph margin. The glyph margin is a managed extensibility framework interface to it, and it looks for classes of yours that export particular attributes. In this particular case, it's going to look for a glyph provider that is a source of glyphs, and then that source of glyphs is going to be associated with a tag, so it's also then going to go and look for a tag provider that will tell it which code qualifies for the glyph by being tagged in the appropriate manner. This is sort of the overall architecture. Here we have a to-do provider, which actually exports out to MEF, and it has this tag type on it of to-do tag. And the to-do provider gives access to a class called the to-do tagger, which finds and marks spans of text that qualify for the to-do tag. Then the glyph factory provider, which also has the same tag type on it, gets you a to-do glyph factory, which will get you the to-do glyph, which is actually just a XAML user control. So these two chains are connected together at the top by the fact that the glyph margin built into Visual Studio looks for glyph factory providers and looks for tag providers that or tagger providers that will connect certain spans of text as qualifying for a particular glyph. So let's show you all of this in code, and you can see how it comes together. I'm going to create a new project, and because this is a Visual Studio extensibility behavior that I'm undertaking, it makes sense to create a V6 project. This is just an empty project that has the sort of plumbing in place for us to package up and share this extension elsewhere. It has very little else, so we're going to have to add in all the references that we need, as well as all the code that we need to actually create the extension. So I'm going to call the project to-do marker. And I'm going to start by adding a number of references. And this is just a whole lot simpler if I sort these by name. Down here under Microsoft Visual Studio.text, there's actually 4 assemblies: .data, .logic, .ui, and .wpf that I need at different parts in this demo. Different pieces of the code need these different pieces of these assemblies. And the namespaces kind of span across the 4 assemblies. There are things in the same namespace that are in 2 different assemblies, but in this particular case I already know that I need all 4 of those, and a couple others while I'm thinking of adding references. Because we're composing things, I'm going to need system.componentModel.composition, and because there's a XAML user control in my life, system.xaml. Alright, so with those in place, I can build out the 6 classes that I need to add in order to get my working extension: the to-do tag, the to-do tagger, the to-do provider, the to-do glyph, the to-do glyph factory, and the to-do glyph factory provider. And we're going to work up from the bottom so that we get IntelliSense as we go along. So I'm going to start then by adding a class. And I'm going to name it to-do tag. This is the simplest of all of our classes. Its only real need is in its name. It has to inherit from the glyph tag base class, and then I don't actually have to write any code for it, but it simply identifies my tag uniquely. So it hardly seems worth having a namespace for this. I'll just type it out: Visual Studio text editor glyph tag. That's to-do tag. Now, these tags do need to be qualified for. That is, there's something about the line of code that makes it get the tag. And we have a class called ToDoTagger, whose purpose in life is to know that something qualifies for the tag and to mark it out. So I am going to add a using statement here. With that in place, I can then specify that my ToDoTagger implements the E-1aPart1.wmv interface, which is a generic interface, and it is an E-1aPart1.wmv of to-do tags. Makes sense? So we need to implement this interface, and there's one function and an event. And at this point, I'm going to switch over to my little file of snippets so that you don't need to watch typing. And I need another using. And this is relying on this little const string. We want to be relatively generic, so for today we're going to search for the letters T-O-D-O. In the future we might search for other letters. Let me just shrink out Solution Explorer so you have a chance to see what's going on here. This function getTags is the real work of the ToDoTagger. It is a function from the E-1aPart1.wmv interface, and the container, which in this particular case is Visual Studio, is going to get a hold of the tagger and say, give me all the tags. And it's going to pass in some spans of text. This is a span of text right here, and so is this, and so is this, right? Some of the text in your document. It might be all the text in the whole document. It might be the text that's visible. That's up to the container, okay? It's going to send you in a bunch of spans, a collection of spans, and you're going to go through them. There's a bunch of snapshot spans in there, so you're going to go through, and for each span that you've been handed, whether that's one or whatever, you're going to look and see if the search text, which is this TODO, is in there or not. Okay, and we're being case insensitive here. If it is, then we make a snapshot span based on the location of what we just found, start plus that offset, and the length of our string to do. And back we go. And that way we'll have gone through all of the spans and created new spans that represent this, these magic letters, wherever they are on the line. That's really the closest thing we have here to business logic, is the fact that the container hands us text, and we search through that text looking for instances of this TODO letter string. I just want to paste in one other little thing, which is here on this event. We just have a very completely boring event handler that if the tags in the system are changing in any way, what do we care? Nothing. We don't. We don't interact with any other tags or really need to process this event in an important way. So now we have the ToDoTag and the ToDoTagger. And I'm going to add our third class in that chain, which is the provider that our container, in this case Visual Studio, is going to be talking to in order to find out, hey, you know, I need to get a hold of a tagger that I can then ask to find all of the tags. So we're going to call this guy ToDoProvider. And he also uses that text tagging namespace. And ToDoProvider implements the E-1aPart1.wmv provider interface. Which again has just the one method. This is pretty much a matter of simply returning our ToDoTagger, but we do check our arguments first. That is, if you send me a text buffer that has nothing in it, then I'm going to complain. I need to be handed real text. But given real text, I'm going to return a to-do tagger. It's possible in some extensions that this would be more complicated. I'd return different kinds of taggers depending on something important about the text I'm being given. Not so much here. We're simply going to say, I'm going to hand you back my to-do taggers.